I wanted to welcome Matt Paknis today. Matt has over 20 years of experience offering talks, retreats, seminars, leadership, and organizational development programs that foster innovation and improve performance. He helps clients remove barriers, improve outcomes, and increase satisfaction. Matt began here at Brown, where he studied organizational behavior and architecture. And, of course, Matt also played football at Brown. Then he earned his MBA at URI, and while he was there, he facilitated leadership and team building programs. He went on to form Team Built and offered with Professor Barrett Hazeltine, Brown's successful 50-hour-long practice and management certificate program. From 1994 to 2003, he worked as an internal consultant and training manager for financial services and telecommunications companies. And Matt has built and maintained a broad private consulting client base, which includes General Dynamics, AT&T, Hasbro, and Johnson & Johnson. And we're thrilled to have Matt back with us today to discuss the challenges managers face, especially when they're in this role for the first time. So welcome, Matt.
Thanks, Heather. I appreciate it. I look forward to working with you today. Our goal here is to give you some of the tools that we use now with new managers. My practice primarily targets and helps companies determine from very technical pools who can become managers and leaders of those folks that carry out very technical components of the work, either creating things, implementing systems. Sometimes I work with doctors, scientists, again, trying to see who has that influence ability in addition to the technical background. So we're going to walk you through a couple of tools that we use. One is a success formula that just talks about the parameters one has as an individual contributor and what will those parameters look like as they become a manager or a leader. We'll talk about the influence that a new manager has on an organization's culture. The top new manager challenges, which is the billing of this webinar, the new manager success factors that address that, a situational leadership curve and tool that if you are a new manager you might find beneficial and helping you quantify the people who report to you, their competence and their commitment. And then we're gonna present you with a competency profile that I've compiled from a broad perspective of clients, sort of a universal picture to give you an idea of what you may want to work on to improve your own skills or to prepare yourself as you become a new manager. And lastly, we'll just leave you off with the development framework to give you a real understanding of how to maintain balance as you take on the new role. So with that said, I guess we're looking at the poll responses. Are they coming in?
They are, I think, because a few people were having trouble logging on. They're still coming in, and I apologize. I think I might have cut off a few people who were trying to answer. But I have closed the poll, and here you come with the results.
Oh, great. Okay, so no answer. We have, looks like a majority of people on the poll have a little bit of management experience, at least the ones that have opted to answer that question. Some folks know what the Peter Principle is, and what we're trying to do with this program is actually help you avoid the Peter Principle, which states often experts in their fields are promoted to their level of incompetence. Traditionally in organizations, the perception is that if you really want to move up or really expand your skills or grow within an organization, the only way to do that is by going up, by taking a management role and then going through the management passages. But the Peter Principle, the best way to avoid that, and I think a lot of companies are doing that now, is to help people realize and encourage them to stay in roles or to flourish in roles where their strengths can best be applied. So the best technical person is often best staying in a technical arena. I've had some issues in the past couple of years where I've been called into clients, and people that are in that very I guess prestigious or highly esteemed role as a technical expert never really either had the capacity or decided to develop those influencing skills. And after a long period of time, they become what we call problem children. They can do the technical work, but the way their habits and their behaviors just don't manifest themselves and support the company's values. So Uh, it's very important to realize and appreciate whether or not you have that capacity, because once you become a manager, your influence on the organization, those behaviors are demonstrated with your behaviors. Let's see, does that poll back up? I'm now the presenter. All right, so good. Thanks, Heather.
You're welcome, Matt.
This is that first model. This is that first slide, which is the manager success formula. And again, the skills, work values, business processes, organizational network, the metrics, and the time that you use and allocate to succeed as an individual contributor has probably placed you on this call. You've done so well in the past, and you've figured out how to use this formula effectively that now you are in a position to consider either a manager or leadership position in your organization. That formula changes significantly when you become a manager. For instance, the organizational network that you had used primarily as an individual contributor usually constitutes the people that you work with, maybe your boss, maybe a couple of outside functional support areas. But when you become a manager, you now are talking to other managers, you're talking to more senior level executives in the organization. You have your team that reports to you. You may have dotted line reporting responsibilities, influence without authority on project teams. So everything tends to grow and amplify as you become a manager. We had one story of a manager or an individual contributor who had been a top 1% performer for a majority of his 25 years with the company, and he finally decided, after a lot of encouragement, to take the management role. And there are tools or heroic management questions that we ask people. Do you need to have more technical expertise than the people that report to you? Do you have to be able to solve any problem that comes up? Do you have to know exactly what's happening in your department at all times? And are you the person primarily responsible for how your team is working? And he agreed with all those statements because he was approaching his work or his people and management as he would in an individual control position, how he would manage an individual project or work process. And so when you become a manager, you sort of have to step back and think more globally and realize your people are now responsible. And that can be often difficult for a high performer, and that's that metric piece. If you're a high performer, when you become a manager, there's a good chance people on the bell curve are going to be reporting to you. All right. Do we have a poll on this one?
Yes, we do. So let's open the poll.
And so this just asks, what do you think is going to be the biggest adjustment for you as you become a manager? Will it be your time? Will it be learning all those new processes? One of my clients, they have 45 business processes and applications that new managers have to learn. Is it acquiring and adapting new work values? You're going to be sort of a representative, the poster child for the new organization or the organization that you work for. Is there a natural affinity to the values that the organization stands for? If your values are aligned with the company or the people that you work with, you tend to have a higher level of performance and satisfaction in the job. So will you find it appealing and satisfying to be in that role, because you'll really be looked for and looked upon to demonstrate those values with your behaviors on a day-in and day-out basis. We talked about the network and skills. In addition to technical skills or application skills, obviously a lot more people skills are going to be involved in working as a manager. So let's see, where do people want to work?
I'm going to go ahead and close the poll. And
okay.
So there's a lot of numbers moving around now. People are really thinking about what you're saying.
Okay.
And I love this idea because it is a big difference in the way that you work, right? From going from that individual to the management role. So I'm going to about 15 seconds.
What's fascinating about the step into management, and majority of companies now look at career development with one of four avenues. You can stay in the current role you're in and expand your skills and become sort of a real subject expert. You can take the management track. You can maybe realign and take your skills to a transfer to another area. or you can start over fresh, learn a new set of skills, maybe work in another, if depending on the size and the availability in your organization. But the management track is fascinating because every time you take a new role as a manager, this success formula is going to adapt and adjust. So it's a very dynamic process. Basically, you have like a new approach. For instance, the executive is going to spend his or her time in different areas than a frontline manager would. They'll probably be talking to constituents and local politicians and other alignment, other owners of other companies. It's an ongoing development and very dynamic process. So it looks like time management. And that's no doubt. We're going to be talking about that in a little future, hopefully in the future when we talk about competencies. This also gives us a chance to look at what people might want in future, the way we've structured the polls in future webinars. So it gives us a good chance. I know aligning around companies' values that can help you prioritize your day is a common theme I hear back from managers in helping them make decisions on how to allocate their time. The biggest zapper, obviously, is all the meetings you have to attend. Usually when you're an individual contributor, you get to spend a lot of time on your work. And as you become a manager, now your time is really allocated on your people, on meetings, on all those other relationships that you developed and the new organizational network that you have. And a lot of times the last thing you have time for is your own work. And sometimes frontline managers in particular carry on technical work as well, responsibilities. All right, thanks for your input on that poll.
All right.
We'll move on to the next slide. Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm just closing out our polls here.
Great.
And let's look at this. I'll go ahead and start loading the next poll for you.
Great. This is a very interesting poll. I don't know, has anyone you can show by hand maybe and tell us and write it in. Has anyone had a wonderful experience with an organization lately? You know, bought a product or received a service that just knocked your socks off, and you're just so pleased that it exceeded your expectations in every way. Some organizations that consistently come up when I do programs that belong on that right include Apple, LL Bean, Nordstrom, BMW. Then on the left, we have organizations that are just making it, and these are the parameters, and this is how we sort of assess those for traits or four characteristics that help us determine or assess a culture. And on the left, we usually have highly regulated companies that are either government related, like the DMV, the IRS, banking, insurance. To the right is usually a very competitive, very competitive companies who have to distinguish themselves with the way they treat you and the way they provide their services. On the right, you know, you're usually an important partner. You walk into an Apple store and you know, immediately you're paired up with someone. They sort of walk you through a very customized experience at their stores. They adapt to your needs. There are many people that respond to your needs if there's an issue. Usually supporting that kind of behavior is a very empowering leadership style. So everyone, even in frontline people, feel like leaders. They feel as though they can take accountable risks and they want to work at these places. Structure is collaborative. People share accountability. Relationships take precedent over the actual workflow or the work task implementation. And the focus and everyone in the organization tends to know where the company's going. They're excited about the direction, its future, external, and about visions and goals. On the left, you know, when you walk into some government agencies, you go to register your car, you feel as though you're a necessary evil. Other people expect you to adapt to them. There's one person serving many. There is a sense that one person is in charge. As a result, people are afraid to take risks, and they tend to be more compliant than committed. Just get me through the day or get me through to break time. One-way communication, silo turf, meaning one group doesn't talk to the other group, and the focus tends to be here and now, internal and tactical, not a lot of future focus. So if you think about the organization you're in, we'd like to get a sense of, you know, how you're doing and where your organization is. If you could take a second and look at that poll to the right and assess those four character traits or sort of metrics that we use, standards that we use to help assess a culture, which is really the compilation of the values, beliefs, and behaviors that you see. Behaviors reflecting the values that are core to the people that work there. Then we'll talk about how you as a manager really has a great influence in helping an organization move to the right here. So if you could take a second and complete that poll, that'd be great. Yeah, the mid-range, interesting. I mean, it looks like out of the group that's on the call, although it's maybe 13%, tend to be usually around the mid-range. And that's why those words are there: frustration, stress, anxiety, fear, confusion. Usually if you're all the way to the right, it's pleasant, and you don't have a lot of stress because these things happen every day and this is your expectation. If you're all the way to the left, it's not that pleasant, but again, not that stressful because you know what to expect every day. If you're pulled in the middle, you can see that, on one meeting or in one phone call or interaction with someone in your company, you might be having an Apple computer day over here on the right. You hang up the phone and all of a sudden you're over here with the DMV because different people operate in different ways. Most of that stress and most of that uncertainty lands on the shoulders of frontline or first-line managers. And so you have to realize that, do I have the capacity to handle that kind of sort of ambiguity? An individual contributor's role is a little more black and white than a manager's role, which all of a sudden becomes very gray. And am I also engaged and enthused by the impact I can have on an organization? Usually that frontline group, because of all the people that they talk to in their network on a day-in and day-out basis, has a huge influence, the largest influence on the way a company operates and its culture. So you have a significant influence on moving that organization to the right. Our next slide.
So Matt,
yes.
Just a question. It sounds like that's pretty stressful. So if it feels stressful to be a manager, what's the impetus to stay in that role or take that role?
Well, I think the other side is looking at yourself. If you look at this continuum and you say, wow, I really love my job as an individual contributor. I never realized that it would involve all these different factors and all these different stressors. Then, staying as an individual contributor is probably a good thing. And again, there's no right or wrong answer. If you look at this continuum and say, you know what, that's fascinating to me. I really sort of thrive. We call it, and we'll review it in a little bit, managerial courage, but addressing stressful situations with vim and vigor. And if you look at this continuum and say, I'd love to be able to do that. A lot of times people that are really good in the role have this underlying value that is influence. They want to leave people with a very positive feeling about themselves and the organization. They love problem solving, and they also have a high drive for achievement. So if you have those three things, when you look at something like this, you find it engaging and almost energizing. If that's the case, management probably is a good fit for you. And so that's a good way as we go through these tools. If there's an affinity and sort of an attraction as we go through them, that's another indicator that management might be the good fit for you if you have not taken the role yet. If you've already taken the role, you can use these tools to say, how can I sharpen or influence or improve myself and my organization? And obviously you can follow up with us to help you with that too. And that's what we're here for, as a resource. So I guess we're going on to is that all right, Heather?
Yeah, that really helps
great.
Explain it.
Great. Yeah, now we'll go on more specifically. Those were organizational challenges that you may run into and opportunities you may run into when you become a new manager. These are the listings of the new challenges and major challenges that people have just taken the role as manager. And again, it might be interesting to see, and we're going to take a poll briefly to see how many of you are experiencing some of these. The first is general managing your former peers. My first job after I graduated, I did a couple things, but one of my major jobs was coming in and I was helping coach the offensive line, and that included coaching some of the guys that I had played next to and actually lived next to for several years here at Brown. And that can be challenging, setting up those boundaries and acknowledging how, you want to maintain a relationship outside of work, a friendship, but at the same time within work, you have to maintain a lot of credibility with equitable treatment of others and fairness. And so setting up those expectations, if you become a new manager and you're leaving a peer group where you're really good friends with people, can be a real challenge. Obviously, some of my clients are in the process of hiring a lot of new people right now. They're in growth modes, and a lot of times, without training being adequately provided, the development of new employees can sometimes land on the shoulders of a manager. And so are you comfortable mentoring and guiding and coaching and developing new people? And it can get frustrating because not everyone, if you're a high performer, not everyone is going to grasp it as quickly as you have. And so you have to figure out, is that something that you don't mind doing, trying to figure out how to best position others for success? Or are you more comfortable, putting yourself out there and being one of the main, being under the spotlight more yourself? Managing diversity, organizations that have more diversity tend to have more conflict because of the mental models and perceptions that people bring to the workplace before they realize that the people that they work with are, share the same values and look at things the same way. Those perceptions can undermine proper communication and lead to conflict. And so being able to manage that and address that and get people performing despite their perceptions, initial perceptions at least, is a component of being a new manager. Related to that, just conflict in general. When you become a manager, there's going to be a ramp up. As an individual contributor, your system might go down. You may not have the tools. You may not get the proper input or information or coaching on a certain job. When you become a manager, all those different levels of people that you're going to be dealing with, new processes, systems, meetings, emails, all those things can conflict with you being able to get your work done and you being able to help your team get your work done, their work done. And so there's a whole new level of being able to manage conflict, which is related to managing time. How do you figure out how to structure your day, your week? Should I clump my tasks, like having visiting hours with professors, so that people can expect me to be certain places during certain kind of the day? That kind of consistency can help people, and applying these kinds of things to your repertoire and tools to help you better manage a much more comprehensive and dynamic day than usually exists when you're an individual contributor. And related to time management, the cause of stress is really that gap between where you are and where you'd like to be. And so if you have a gap between, where your work products are supposed to be, where you're supposed to be developmentally, where your people are supposed to be developmentally or production-wise, that causes stress. And a manager's job is really, in essence, trying to identify the obstacles or challenges that are keeping those obstacles, that are creating those obstacles, and reducing or eliminating them so your folks and your team can perform at a higher level. All right. We'll round out the other challenges. As mentioned, one of my clients has 45 to 50 new applications, computer applications, tools, reporting mechanisms that new managers have to learn. There was a time study we did with one of my clients, and we just wanted to track, and we had all new managers carry a handheld, and every half hour they had to select. They were prompted, and they had to select with 10 options what was the number one, what they were doing with their time at that moment that they were prompted. And it came back to close to 40% of the time in the first 3 months was dedicated just to learning new systems. So they weren't having, and the rest of their time was fragmented. So they really weren't having the opportunity to go out and meet their people and develop their people. They were spending more time just spending time on the computer. And we addressed it by getting the manager in more of a grooming, shadowing role, where once they took the official job, they had more background on the system so they could make an easier transition. Motivating your employees, trying to figure out what people feel is a good form of recognition. How can they feel successful in their work? How can they feel in control of that? How does their work reinforce their identity? Everyone looks at things a little bit differently. And so each one of the people that work for you probably responds differently to different incentives and mechanisms that allow them to achieve their best. And new managers that find that very appealing tend to be better managers. Managers that sort of use and look at people in a cookie cutter numerical fashion tend to find the work less engaging and enthralling. The gap. A lot of my clients now have what we say grandparents and grandchildren. There's a missing generation of parents, so to speak, and critical to the business is transferring that information and knowledge and skill from that senior population to a much more junior population. And that the role that the manager takes is really very important to that transfer, facilitating information sharing and transfer of knowledge from one group, from Ozzy and Harriet to Ozzy Osbourne. A group that sort of is reflected by Ozzy Osbourne and their different styles and different approaches. And it's fascinating, but again, it can be very challenging. Generally, every company that I work with is trying to constantly look for ways to reduce expenses, and that's done either through production or with labor or with materials, and looking at things in ways that they can save money and constantly improve the process or improve the technique to make things more efficient and effective is often a part of the incentive system they set up for managers. And although it's very rewarding and fascinating, at the same time it can add added stress to a new manager's role. And lastly, sometimes when you get in that role, if another person had applied for the job, or there's generational differences, or just some people don't like change and they love their former manager, you're going to run into resistance from employees. And that can be, I've even had new managers come and they're great people and they do a great job, but they have certain people that work for them that refuse to talk to them because they don't think the new manager has been around 40 years to justify them needing to be reported or justifying there being a new manager. So those are some of the challenges, the major challenges that we see new managers experiencing as they take on the role. If you could, if you're a new manager or if you're anticipating the role, if you could look at that list on the poll and select the challenges that you feel are going to be the ones that are going to be a challenge for you. You can pick more than one, and this also gives us a nice opportunity to see what might be some topics for future webinars where we can help you.
Matt, you're generating a lot of work for me here.
No, sorry about that. Hey, are we getting, how are the people doing out there? Is there?
You're getting a lot of nice responses, and I want to apologize. I closed the last poll way too quickly.
Sorry
I didn't
about
realize
that.
how many people were still in it, and I appreciate the audience patience, and I appreciate your flexibility, Matt, with some of my technical difficulties.
No, yeah,
today.
sorry. Did we get more people signed on? Because I know we had a lot of people in the beginning, and there was a glitch,
yes,
I guess, in
I'm up to
connectivity.
48 now. So.
Great.
and
I wanted to say hi to
sure all
my.
those people have it. Go ahead.
I know there were some people from my class era and from my coaching era at Brown that I probably have run into, although I don't live far from Brown now. I live about 40 minutes away, and I'm over there on a regular basis. So I've been able to maintain relationships with people throughout, several different eras of Brown, and it's been a very rewarding experience. But I wanted to say hello to my friends out there that might be on the call in particular.
I have a few people still answering the poll.
Great.
And I have a question coming in that says something about, you see that you're struggling with the transition
Mm-hmm.
You see that your organization is really one in the middle, and now you find these challenges. What are the next steps you can take? And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a little bit what you're going to cover next,
That's a
and
great
we're hoping
question.
to find in this poll.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're going to have some
I'm going to
success factors for you next that we've seen. Thanks for your input on this. This is very helpful. So it looks like our top vote getter is managing inexperienced employees. It looks like there are a lot of new people out there in the field, which is probably related to motivating employees as well, which is also high. How do you really figure out, what makes certain people tick? Um, you know, I don't know if you've read this book. It's called First Break All the Rules, and it was a Gallup poll. It's based on a Gallup poll, and they said one of the key factors in employee satisfaction is having a friend in the workplace. Now, I'm not suggesting you become a friend as their manager, but if they find someone else in the company that they can have a regular friendship relationship with, people tend to be more satisfied in the work. The other natural things that we find is that when people feel as though they have the control to achieve, they feel as though they can control their own work output and they can get recognized for that work. The value of the work that they do reinforces their identity. Those are all things that can help people maintain more motivation. And also it's a nice way to bring people along. But we're going to cover that shortly. Just wanted to talk briefly also about what do I do when I'm in that transition and I'm in the middle and it's stressful and there's more conflict and there's frustration. A lot of times one of the best saving graces is lining up, if you can, with a mentor in the organization, not necessarily someone you report to, but someone that you respect and someone you can talk to and sort of reflect on your work, your challenges. That's one of the best things I've seen new managers do. And it's actually some systems I've been implementing in organizations over the last couple of years, is helping train mid-level and high-level managers to really mentor the new people in the role. So here are some of the success factors that we had referenced earlier. And again, this list comes from, telling us if people have this going for them, when they're considering the role, they're in a much better way, or they can transition into that role in a much more efficient manner. So obviously the first is interest. We just had a program earlier this week with one of my high-tech clients, and there was a woman in there that really scored off the charts in her capacity to manage or deal with people, just a nice personality, can deal with everybody, but she really didn't have the interest in being a manager. And everyone that she's ever reported to or her peers said, you should get into management. You'd be great. And all the quantifiable assessments tell us the same thing, but she just didn't have the interest. And I don't know, if someone's not doing something that they think they should be doing, it's usually lack of willingness, lack of ability, or lack of being allowed. And if you don't have the willingness, even though you have the ability and your organization is really encouraging you, it may not be the best fit. So it's very important to really want to do this. It's something that you have to have a tremendous interest in, because the challenges can become significant, but the rewards are significant as well. Are you ready? Are you performing well in your current role? And so you're positioned for success. Do you know your strengths? Daniel Goleman in his work, and we referenced this before in other webinars, in his emotional intelligence book, states that your self-awareness, particularly for a manager, is the most important component of emotional intelligence, which includes motivation, self-regulation, social skills, and empathy. And if someone knows what their talents are, they tend to highlight them and put them in a position where they can be seen and utilized so they feel successful, they feel more motivated. It also gives you a framework for understanding others. So high self-awareness makes you a better manager, because now you can better understand others and know what makes them tick. So that's something that's very important. The global business understanding, appreciating the whole business and how your department fits into that big picture, really helps managers. We used to say, great players can carry out their individual role. I'm sorry, good players. Great players not only carry out their role, but they have an understanding of what other people are supposed to be doing on a play or in their functions at work. it gives you a better perspective of how things are working. And good managers, new managers, tend to have that. They work hard to grasp that. Do you have the interest and willingness to be a role model, to demonstrate the behaviors that you want to see demonstrated in the people that work for you, to grasp the goals and the core values that the company stands for? And naturally, if they're part of your natural repertoire, it will, again, be very satisfying and rewarding for you. Do you have a high level of energy? Do you keep popping? Do you, bounce back like one of those blow-up old bozos that you punched and they bounce back? Best managers, again, they have that desire. Problems and challenges tend to energize them. Can you see things? Can you separate facts from opinions? When giving feedback, people respond and can agree with facts versus opinions. So a lot of times our best managers are grounded, they're sensing, they can look at a situation and separate and distill all the opinions and conclusions that are around it and really get to the brass tacks or the underlying root causes pretty easily. Do you have good networking skills? Do you love to build networks just because you love people and love to meet new people? Naturally, when you become a new manager, that network is going to really explode. And so if you love doing that, it's a natural fit for you. If you like to be left alone and so you can concentrate and really focus on your work and think more and more about less and less, the management role may not be best for you. Obviously, this goes without saying. I mean, there's a lot of argument that, can you really influence this once someone becomes, a mid-level or middle-aged person or, a professional person? Hopefully you've had the background and the tutelage to give you a framework where you can make good ethical decisions. But we know that new managers that are equitable, that are fair, that make appropriate decisions and are transparent in their behaviors and their actions tend to generate rapport, respect, and credibility and trust. And once they have that, it's much easier for them to be able to motivate the people that work for them. And the last success factor, and that you can ask yourself, do you look for win-win situations? Do you not only make good decisions for yourself, but do you consider the needs of others and try to position them for success as well while making your decisions regarding the organization and regarding your people? All right. Now, Heather, help me with this one. Did we make a poll for this one?
Yes, we did. And it should be coming up now.
Great.
And, it was really trying to look at, okay, which of these can you use now as a manager, right?
Right. What are the success factors we use, or which ones do you think would help you the most and benefit you as you become a new manager? And again, this might give us some insight into what kind of webinars we can offer you in the future. Any other questions come up?
We did get a question, and I believe I sent it on to you about how the challenges and solutions change if you're an owner-manager.
Well, that's a good point. I think if you own the firm and you're managing others, obviously the accountability, good managers take a lot of ownership and accountability for their work. They feel as though what they're doing and the decisions they're making are guided by the bottom line, as though the company is theirs. Now, obviously, that reality sets in if you are the actual owner, and so you also may then take on the role of seeking finance. When you're a manager inside an organization, you often aren't concerned with outside sources for financing, for vendor relationships. A lot of times those are put into place and you just sort of are told this is how it's going to be when you're a frontline manager in a large organization. All those other ancillary support functions, connections, sort of lifebloods of organizations, and almost all those systems, I think you have to consider and work with when you're the owner as well. Can you think of anything else, Heather?
That's it for now, but I have posted the results of the
Oh,
poll.
good. Yeah, self-awareness. And a lot of people say, well, how do I become more self-aware? There are a lot of tools, there are interest inventories that would fall along the lines, although it's more genetic-based than others. The Myers-Briggs uh, temperament indicator, which you can go online. If you pump in MBTI on a Google search, that'll pop up and it'll direct you. It'll give you an indication of how you like to take in energy, how you like to make decisions, how do you like to take in information, and how you like to structure your day. And based on those 4 dichotomies, there are 16 different styles, and it's just another way to sort of look at yourself, but also, if you're considering managing, more importantly, realizing that other people don't think like you. There's DISC profiles. There are also competency profiles like the Johnson O'Connor Institute puts out there. But really getting feedback, too, from other people that you trust, on how you like to operate and how they see you. We had referenced the Johari window before, but really being able to expand your own self-awareness and knowledge of yourself so your blind spots are more curtailed makes you not only more apt to put yourself in positions where you're going to excel and succeed, but it also gives you a chance to understand others in a lot more effective way. Let's see what else was high here. Leadership, networking skills, getting out there. Again, we appreciate you're putting these in because these give us a chance to take a deeper dive, and maybe we can offer some other modules on these in the future. Situational leadership
is good information.
Oh, thanks.
Just wanted to let you know I had moved on your slides for you. Okay.
Okay. Yeah, I saw that. I saw that pop over. Situational leadership is a model that was created by a guy named Paul Hersey. Went to Madison, New Jersey High School in the 1950s and actually played in a band with my mother. His model was sold then to Ken Blanchard a couple of years ago. And it's often used and well embraced by new managers because it helps you look at performance in a more quantifiable way. It looks at developmental levels regarding 2 components, one being your competency and the other being your level of commitment. So people come in an organization, they move from right to left on this little grid. You come in and usually if you don't have skills or if a new worker that reports to you doesn't have much knowledge about the company, about the organization, their competence is low. But their commitment is usually high. They're very excited to have the job. And I'll show you. So what do they need from you? And here's the corresponding grid. In that first level, a D1 employee would need an S1 response from a manager. And again, this grid moves from right to left. So the normal curve there follows that pattern, that bell curve that we're looking at right there. So a new person almost needs all direction. Along the lower axis is from left to right, the amount of direction someone needs, low to high. And then along the left axis, going up, would be the amount of support someone needs, depending on their developmental level, from low to high. And as a person grows and develops and gains some competence, that first level also, when we talk about education, would be unconscious incompetence. People are, happiness is bliss, right? They don't know what they don't know. Next level, they're in the company for a while and they become consciously incompetent. So they have some competence, but their commitment drops because now they're aware that there's a lot they don't know. And they think, oh my gosh, maybe I took on too much here. This could be overwhelming for me. So what do they need from you as a leader? Well, they need more support and less direction. They need coaching, encouragement, some ideas, maybe polling. What do you think about this? When you, in your new management role, or someone reporting to you as a new employee and experienced employees to the right of that midline, the leader, the situational leader, really determines the amount of time you as the manager, or if you're reporting to someone, determines the amount of interaction and time you spend with that person in the developmental stage. Once they turn and go to the left of that midline, the person that's being developed determines the amount of interaction because they're now competent. In that third stage, D3, they're now consciously competent. They may have to think through every step, but they can do the job. So what do they need from their leader or their manager? Well, an S3 response, which would be almost all support, encouragement, maybe more challenge, and ultimately, once someone's been in the role, feels very competent, they get to be that developmental level D4, where they're highly committed, highly competent. They're unconsciously competent now. They can do the job naturally. And what do they need then? They can just be handed off. They can become mentors, and they feel really very positive about their work. Now, to help people understand this tool and this model, we often have them rank themselves developmentally, so they can see what they need from either their mentor or their manager to get up to speed. And that's what we've done with you on this next grid. When you become a manager, you can then take the competency profile of the people that work for you, those individual contributors, and determine, okay, developmentally, where are they and what do they need from me to be their best? Do they need direction? Do they need coaching, support, or delegating? That quantifiable matrix I created and put together in this next profile. Here's the first 6 competencies that we've seen really make a successful manager in a majority of the companies that I serve. They are able to make good decisions based on the knowledge that they have about the workflow and what's needed in the organization. They're tied into what's valuable to the organization in a given day or week or month, so they can make good decisions that impact the production and manufacturing levels or service levels that they're influencing at any one time. They have a good understanding of the natural output, the work output. They can thus plan the days, their day, their people's days. They can organize around that and structure around that. They have good systems in place that help them better manage their time. They know how to develop trust with their actions. They're credible, their presence, their voice. 55% of their credibility is based on how they look. So they, utilize where they can, being present in meetings with other people. 38% of the credibility is based on the quality of their voice. So, if they need to, using the phone, the last resource often good managers use is actually the email to communicate with their people, because only 7% of the messages coming across, 93% is being made up in their heads, and that can lead to conflict. I'm sure some of you have had road rage on email unintentionally because people misinterpret your voice and body language because they don't see it. Directing others, you're comfortable in setting direction, setting tone. You know the jobs well enough, so you know what to expect from people and what their output should be. Good leaders know how to set the goals, roles, processes. If those roles, processes, and goals are real clear and agreed upon, you're going to have a lot less conflict. Relationships are going to be healthy, trust-based, collaborative, and there's going to be a high level of commitment. When those things are in place, the team is going to be functional. We referenced managerial courage. That's just approaching challenges and problems and conflict in a positive way, actually looking forward to it. Being able to mediate, identify conflict when it's brewing, controlling your emotions, being fact-based, looking at the facts rather than opinions, being able to respond in a constructive way, whether it be by competing, accommodating, compromising, collaborating, or avoiding, depending on the situation, and choosing the most effective response for a given moment, and then managing and moving forward are all components of conflict management. And being able to sort of embrace those steps and feeling comfortable in those steps is important. Motivating others, listening, and then obviously still maintaining some functional expertise. So you can see so many of these new traits that good managers need, or competencies that they need in order to succeed, are people related. And we have a poll up here. Again, it's related to, what do you see and what would you like to improve? What do you need to round out as you become a manager? And that's why we put developmentally, would you be a D1, D2, D3, D4 in each one of these competencies? So if you could take a moment and complete that poll, that'd be great.
Matt, while people are doing the poll, I just got a comment about your competencies and your situational leadership. Someone said, can you explain a little bit about what you mean by supporting?
Yep. Support would mean encouragement. So a person that is in that D3 level is competent. They can do the work. They may not do it as fast as they'd like, but they can consciously do it. So what do they need from their leader or their mentor is encouragement, is, maybe being pushed or maybe even being slightly challenged. Well, come on, why don't you try to get this done by the end of the day? They don't need a lot of recommendations on how to do things because they're at a stage now where they're really going to grow by trying to figure it out and being able to figure it out on their own. So support is more or less encouragement, challenge, letting the person know that you believe in their abilities and they can do the job, and you're there as a resource if a problem comes up, but you really want them to be out there autonomous and creating their own way and making their own way. Is that okay?
I think that's a great way to answer it, and we're just waiting. We've got about 2 more people on the poll, so I'm going to give you another second and close that out. I've seen you be able to use this information to really relate to all kinds of management issues, and I always like to go back to it as well.
Yeah, so another question that we had in the past, I think, by someone in the alumni office actually was a good question, was what distinguishes the success factors from those competencies? And the success factors are really what you want to look at when you're considering the new role or when you're brand new in the role. Do I have these things going for me? They're like the ideal candidate profile. The competencies are once you get in the role. These are the things that we see that really good managers do day in and day out basis. These are the competencies that distinguish what sometimes we call a positive deviant. We have an organization, and despite whatever happens, these people, these positive deviants, tend to excel. Well, what helps them excel? It's these competencies, these manager competencies. So it looks like we have a few that tied. Managerial courage, stepping up and addressing challenges in a very positive, we use the term vim and vigor, right? Getting up there and wanting, almost being energized by challenges and looking forward to problem solving. Related to that is probably motivating. Your people, if they're running into challenges, how do you keep them motivated? How do you keep them engaged? One of the best ways we've seen is if people have set goals, set performance standards, not only for a week, but almost for a day. And if you're helping them remove the obstacles and encouraging them and supporting them and getting to that point, it's a nice way to keep them motivated. Again, trust, if they know that when they're in a vulnerable position, they're not going to be hurt by you, or you won't let them down. That's a critical component of being able to motivate someone, that credibility, and helping them see where there's a translation between their work and their identity. They feel as though it reinforces who they are, and they really get a natural intrinsic value from being able to do that work and feeling control of their own achievement. Those are all ways to best engage them. We also know companies that tend to have real clear policies regarding roles, processes, conduct, tend to have more satisfied people that stay on the job. There are turn-ons like achievement, recognition, the work itself, and then there are stay-ons, which are hygiene factors, and those include clear policies and procedures, being able to have a good relationship with your boss. Lower on that level is salary, esteem, status, those kinds of things. But the things that really turn people on, that get them to really perform at a high level, are those things that they feel are related to how they perform in the job. And those are ways you can motivate yourself, but also motivate others. All right, we ready for the next one? Now, within the framework, and this is sort of where we'll step off, we've made this little model. As an individual contributor, clearly if you can understand what this is, it's intended to be a bicycle. And you can see that top circle is really what you do as an individual contributor. You manage yourself. When you become a manager, you take on those 2 other significant circles: coaching others and leading team results. And so the question you want to ask yourself, are you able to do that? Usually when it gets real stressful in an organization and you're brand new, you're going to be held accountable for these new metrics that relate to the team and the team's results. And so a lot of attention can be drawn to that. If you spend too much time on that, you tend to overlook either coaching others or managing yourself. If you overlook one of your circles, and this is why we use a little bike analogy, you're going to crash. And so our recommendation is you have to maintain this ongoing balance between these three. Also, any group that I've ever polled, you say, you know, what's the most memorable trait about someone that you thought was a really good, effective leader? It usually relates to these coaching traits. They were the way they carried themselves, the way they spoke to you, the way they gave you feedback, the way they set up the day, the way they made you succeed, the way they removed all the barriers. But when things get stressed, usually that's the area that gets ignored first. And so you can, if you ignore your folks, they're going to burn out. Likewise, if you ignore yourself, it's like being on an airplane when they say if the cabin loses pressure, you got to put the oxygen mask on yourself. If you're not taking care of yourself, you're not going to be good to anybody, including your company or your people. So you have to take into consideration, are you willing to take on those two major significant barrels and buckets in addition to managing yourself if you want to become a manager? It is probably one of the most rewarding jobs in the world, and I know we sometimes, and hopefully this overview didn't paint a bleak picture, but I think we want to give an honest appraisal too, because the right people need to take the right role. There is a fit, and again, as I said earlier, people that have an underlying value or are drawn to problem solving, have a high drive for achievement, but also want to influence people in a very positive way. Those are things we have a very hard time teaching. If we can diagnose and identify those in the application process, we usually have a winner in the management role. So hopefully that gives you some guidance and help in helping you identify yourself as a good new manager.
Matt, this has been a lot of wonderful information. I do notice that we're at the end of our time. I did send you one last question that came in. I think we've answered most of them about the credibility statistics.
Oh, that stuff, yeah, that was great. That's from Staples Scale-O-Meter, and that's based on some research at UCLA. If you have any follow-up, too, you can always send me an email. I'll send you my bibliography. But this is really cool stuff. This is how we actually elect our presidents, and this is based on the first televised election between Kennedy and Nixon. And people, I guess half the households in the country still didn't have TVs, but people that saw that debate between Kennedy and Nixon, hands down, thought Kennedy won the debate. People that listened on the radio, hands down, thought Nixon won the debate. But the distinction in the way they looked was sensational. Nixon, I think, had gone in or was going in for an appendectomy. His hair was oily. He had a 5 o'clock shadow, big circles under his eyes. His suit was wrinkled, whereas Kennedy looked GQ. So they've studied those factors, your presence, your voice, and your content, since that debate, and it follows suit. It's the one accurate predictor of successful presidential candidates. 55% of your vote is based on how that candidate looks, 38% is based on how they sound, 7% is based on what they actually say. Now, this is scary because Abraham Lincoln, if you use that criteria, wouldn't be elected today, and he's considered our best president, most respected president of all time. So, unfortunately, we may be misled by appearances, and at the same time, we may not, because of that, we may think if someone's too good looking or sounding, they may be just trying to smoke us. So getting down to the facts, I think, is the most important thing. But that presence is so important. Being able to be present in a meeting is very important for a manager.
Well, Matt, you mentioned resources, and I just wanted to show, speaking of Lincoln, you had a great book on his that you were recommending.
Yep.
Here's a few of the things you spoke of, Daniel Goleman's work. I know you also like to talk about Drucker and his work.
Yep. Kouzes and Posner, that book on the leadership challenge is a wonderful book as well. It really gives you a framework for understanding what sort of evolved that thriving leadership traits that would influence that thriving culture constitute. And then also this 1 Minute Manager by Blanchard is a great read for a new manager. It says basically 3 things distinguish a good new manager. catching people doing something right, when you do have to correct behavior, address the behavior, not the person, and set performance goals every day. Do those three things, you're going to succeed as a manager.
Well, I think that we're about out of time, but I wanted to let people know that, one, this will be recorded, and two, it will also come with a packet that will have almost all of the slide information plus extra tools that Matt's always so willing to share. I also want to let you know, if you're in the middle of any sort of career development, we at the Brown Alumni Relations have started the Career Navigator, and we have some tools. Part of this is our coaching tool, and all the information about the coaching program and the webinars are on that site. We have another assessment tool called Focus. We have a researching tool called Career Search, which is a great way to research companies, locations. It also has a good way to connect between the sort of companies out there and people within your LinkedIn profile, which is a nice new feature it offers. We have our job board that always has over 300 active jobs ever since I've started it. And what is great is that it has the list of all the employers who are signed up. So even if they don't have an active job, there is some connections for you there as well. And part of that networking that Matt's always talking about, you have a great networking tool through Brown with our LinkedIn, with our Brunette in-house, which is your fellow alums saying, yes, I'm out here wanting to connect, wanting to be a resource, and here's some great ways, information about me so you can see how to connect with me. And then, of course, our LinkedIn groups now, I believe over 8,000 on the main group, which is one of the biggest in the universities out there of our sister and brother organizations. We will continue the webinar series. The next one in February will be Karen Hoffman and her cohorts, and they're going to do Rethinking Your Career. And then we're going to have Dave Crimmins, who's actually on campus today helping out with the Career Lab, and he's going to do a networking presentation. And if you have more questions for Matt or more information that you need as you go through and hear the webinar, or after this presentation, if you think of some more questions, here is his website. Or if you have questions for us, that's a way to contact us as well. Matt, do you have any final words?
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure, and go Bruno.
Thank you. Thank you all for attending today.